What are you waiting for? Join us on our journey and let's go on an adventure together.
What is up, everyone? This is Homie and the Dude, the father and son podcast and tabletop gaming network. And we are here today and so pleased to be joined by Jess Pendley, a best-selling writer and game designer and one half of the powerhouse team behind the awesome third-party D&D 5e supplement creator, the Underground Oracle. The crowd goes crazy. Jess, welcome to the show.
Thank you. That was a hell of an intro. I like that. I need you to be my hype man like every day.
That was his best one ever. Holy shit. I've never seen him muster that much energy. That was incredible. Wow.
I might set that as my alarm. So when I get up every morning, I'm just hearing you talking me up and get me out of bed.
We'll send you a clip.
We'll trim it out. So Jess, obviously, you make incredible things for us creators to use and to assist us. Talk to us about how you found your love for the tabletop gaming community. Where was that young? Was that something you found later in life? How did that come about to you?
Way before I knew about Dungeons and Dragons, I was super, my younger siblings and I were nerds and we were very poor. And so we had very limited resources of what we could do. So like we had like board games and things. And once you've played like these board games, a million times, you're not getting any new ones. So we would like flip the board game over and like create our own new board games that could use those pieces and stuff. So we started doing that from a super young age, and probably to a point that it was, I wouldn't have wanted anybody at school to know that I was still doing that kind of thing. But, so I loved creating for that. And then like my family got super into Hero Quest when I was probably like 12 or 13. Like my mom got Hero Quest and like all these little expansions that had like each little individual characters and stuff. And we kind of all played that as a family. And it was like very close to Dungeons and Dragons. Like I could feel that magic right there, but it didn't capture it completely. And then I started going to this gaming store. That's where I met Keith, actually. And he had been creating, an entire role-playing world and stuff for Dungeons and Dragons and like a sci-fi universe, everything forever. So I started playing in third edition and I just absolutely fell in love. It was like everything that I had been, kind of mimicking myself, in my backyard as a kid. I was able to do this at a table with other adult people without any sort of, no name calling or anything, which was nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it developed there. Like I'd say like I found my real love for it in 3.5. Like that, to me, it has its flaws definitely, but that's like everyone's got their version of D&D. That's my version of D&D is 3.5. So that is where I get my roots right there.
Thanks for watching this episode. We really appreciate you supporting Homie and the Dude.
Please hit us with the Holy Trinity, like our Facebook page, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and follow us on Instagram. Just search @Homie and the Dude. It all really helps. Amazing. And do you know what I was going to ask? Obviously, you now create these incredible supplements for 5e because it's obviously the most current version that's out. But what was like going from third edition, you're like, this is my edition. What was the biggest jump for you? What was the biggest thing that you had to learn and adjust to moving from third to fifth?
Well, Keith and I actually, we considered when we were first, because the world that we've created together, because right now the way that we set up Underground Oracle, it's so that we can release supplements in a way that they will appeal to anyone if they want to play in their own home world or in their own, or in a preset campaign setting, but it's still ambiguous enough that, they can put it anywhere they want, and we try to put our flavor in it. And we've been adding in our own lore and things like that are important to us, that we know how it ties directly into our own setting. But we haven't been able to put that out exactly yet. But the biggest jump for us would be the micromanaging. Like 3.5 had a lot of micromanaging. And when we first just started designing, we were going toward Pathfinder instead of 5th edition, actually. But then Pathfinder dropped its 2nd edition, like halfway through us, getting a lot of stuff concrete on our end. And we looked at it and we were like, we didn't vibe with it as well. So we're like, let's get 5th edition. Everybody loves it. Critical Role is making it pop. And we've heard that it was like huge. Like it was really weird to go from like only hearing about Dungeons and Dragons in, our personal small town gaming scene to like seeing people here and there wearing shirts and stuff referencing it and things like that was like a huge deal. We were like, what the hell? That's amazing. And then we got the books, and it was the amazing thing about 5th edition is because there's not all that micromanaging, you can just jump in and start playing it fairly quickly, or you can jump in and start running it fairly quickly. Like I remember when I was learning 3rd, it took a commitment to learn 3rd edition, and I really was never comfortable running it, honestly. But 5th edition, it's amazing. It's the walls have been kind of broken down a lot as far as like the technical due diligence that you would have to do in order to be able to run a game. So it's super welcoming to new players. And then we got online, and the community was just amazing. I mean, you can on Twitter, you can find, any sort of, fires that you want to, but the TTRPG community, I think the D&D community, especially as a whole, I think has been super welcoming and wonderful. So they really, seeing that was super inspiring as we were doing our research to decide whether we wanted to kind of put ourselves here or not, and so it really helped us acclimate a lot better to, the transition between 3rd and 5th.
Yeah, interesting. So give us the timeline on that as well, that sort of, let's see if this is the space for us. How long ago was that when you were just determining?
We're going on our 2nd year in September of actually publishing stuff. So before we published our first materials, we had been writing and things forever and learning the system. And I think we took probably a year prior to that to just kind of feel out the community, fill out the system, do a lot of research, not just with, what other third parties and things we're releasing right now, but also like how receptive, because I had been poking around Reddit prior to that. And I personally, Reddit's not the community for me. I know a lot of people find their place there, but for indie D&D creators, it wasn't always super welcoming from what I, as a fly on the wall. But when I went to the Twitter community, I saw that it was actually a pretty cool little ecosystem that people had carved out for themselves. Very supportive. Creators didn't mind, interacting with one another, sharing with one another. So, I showed it to Keith. We observed for a while, and we're like, yeah, this is definitely the place for us. So probably a year of just kind of like scouting out and doing some reconnaissance before actually publishing our stuff.
Amazing. Well,
Wow.
do you know what?
It's like you were doing market research.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And it was more like we're both very
That's
creative people, but we also knew like we're very creative people. We want to get our stuff out there, but we also want to be a part of a community. And we knew that if we weren't able to find that foothold there, it's why share your, what you're putting your heart and soul into with people who are, basically spitting venom every day. So we were very heartened by what we saw.
Yeah. Well, it definitely comes across in, you're instantly from what you're saying, your attention to detail is evident. And furthermore, it comes across in your supplements. The stuff that you guys make are so beautifully detailed in both your art and in your lore, and furthermore within your stat blocks that you make, the bios for NPCs or plot hooks and stuff that you guys put into these supplements are so detailed. And I wanted to know, like, obviously we know that Keith does a lot of like the main, like, you said before, Keith is like the concept creator kind of thing, yeah, who drives it all. And so how do you find like these intricate details, and how do you get like to choose what goes in the supplement? Because obviously I imagine you guys have pages and pages and pages to draw from. What's your refining process? Do you really have to like be like, oh, we've got to get rid of that one and we don't want to, but we got to?
It's so painful, and it's where, like, as a creative duo, that's where like the one little bit of contention really comes in, because Keith would release a like 400-page supplement every month if he could. Like every detail's in there, he just has that. And so I have to go in and I have to say, okay, there's this amazing amount, this wealth of lore and stuff. What can we afford to trim out and still get everything that we want across? Still make sure that, it feels like an Underground Oracle supplement, but, if you're playing in, any of the Forgotten Realms or anywhere, you can still utilize it if you need to. And I think we do that well, but it is difficult. And there's always so much more that we push to the side. And we have, it's good because we develop with a concept that we like to call like the lore web. So everything is connected. Everything is. So whether you've seen it yet or not, there's little threads that are tying everything together, from like the different archetypes that we have to the locations to like the downtime destinations. They all have something that's linking them to a greater part of the world. So even when we have to carve that stuff out, it's always going back in a little file so we can pepper it in somewhere else.
Okay. Yeah. And so you mentioned that within the lore of the supplements, you're sort of like navigating a fine line of really personalizing it to your setting, but also making it as accessible for people to use in other settings or other campaigns or whatever. How are you doing with that navigating? Is it because we're kind of trying to do the same thing?
We're doing the same thing.
We're doing it sort of starting out with NPCs that support a setting that we're creating. And we got to strip out for the really detailed part of the lore. We find that we're stripping that out so that anyone else can put in, if we're talking about pirates, for example, we're not talking about the next layer of pirates, because that might not be part of the story. So how are you managing that?
Well, so the key is to find this is the way that we approach it anyway. Everybody develops different. So I'll give you what we do, and then you can, take it with a grain of salt. But for something like, so Mama Verdosa's bathhouse, that is a downtime destination that we recently did. We know.
Awesome, by the way.
Oh, thank you so much.
We love it.
So sick. So sick.
I really appreciate that. It's love to hear that. That was one of Keith's babies, and it has a massive presence in our world. It's popped up multiple times through our campaigns. So what we do is we go, okay, with this specific downtime destination, if we were introducing game one, this location to players who knew nothing else about our world, how can we get the heart and soul of this singular location across to them? Because they have no knowledge of what's going on in Quasaloth at that moment at all. They know this location, and that's what they're going to know when they leave. So we approach it like it is its own tiny little setting. So you get, you have to make sure the NPCs are the real people And later when they're walking around the world and they meet them, they still feel that. But you know, they're walking around our world or their world, they're the same people. So it's just approaching it without having to have any of that back knowledge, any of that, you know, that we know by heart, but that a brand new player game one is not going to know. They only know Mama Verdos's bathhouse. So that's how we do the main trimming. And then we always try to put in like little, you know, Easter eggs or things or whatever we can do to, like, people who have been with us from the beginning might have a greater knowledge of what's currently out there than people who signed up last week. So we try to do that, but the main of it is just to find that kernel, that heart of the location or of the NPC or anything that we know this is who this is, what this is, and now you can put it wherever you need it to go.
Amazing. And do you know what? I'll tell you something. We were looking at the bathhouse, and we have a bathhouse in our world, amazingly. And I was like, God damn, this is incredible. I was looking at what you guys have done, and like, I'll be honest, I'm definitely going to use pieces of it for what we're doing to flesh out some of it, because it's so beautiful what you guys have done. And like you said, you can feel like a lot of the energy, and like I love the fact that you even have like the treatments that you can get
So
here,
cool.
and like, you know, it just makes it like come to life, and it allows for more than. The beautiful thing is you also have a bunch of plot hooks and gossip that can go in here and stuff, and it means that it can both be a downtime recreation of like, there's a bathhouse in the city and we just went to battle, like let's go like clean off and have like a spritz, you know, kind of thing. And you know, or it can be this place that carries a lot of the plot. It carries some of the even the main arc maybe. And you know, I think that's what's really beautiful about what you guys are writing. What I wanted to ask you is, obviously from all these, like from you stripping things out and whatnot, I can imagine that takes time. And something that we found when we're creating our NPCs is it requires, you know, a bit of time for us to sit down and flesh it out and think about it and really think about the wording of how we want to present it, because it does come across differently when you know, word things in certain ways and, you know, really think about the language you're presenting to people. How is it for you guys from concept to release? Can you like give us like a step-by-step kind of overview of like your like Jacob's ladder to publishing, basically? For
things like NPCs, locations, things like that, it's a little bit more loose, simply because a lot of these things that people are seeing now have been in existence or have been in development as far as their story, things like that, for over a decade. So those, you know, they've been a long time waiting in the wings before they made an appearance, you know, in our publications. And then sometimes we'll come up with well, not sometimes, all the time, we're coming up with new concepts. We're like, oh, this would be neat, or this would be a great person to run into. Or Keith might put in an NPC in one of our home games, and I'm like, this is an amazing individual, and they need to be a part of our world now. So if it's something like that, then it typically between concept, going through play tests, going through like that. If it's not something that's heavily mechanical, then it's probably 3 or 4 months from like when it's been thought up to when it would get released. The things that take a little more playtesting and things like archetypes and what have you, those are 4 or 5 months, I would say, before they end up hitting the actual publication. And yeah, that's probably our process. But to be quite honest, it's such it's all such a whirlwind all the time that it's hard to nail that exact like timeline down, because again, it's just like that is the good thing about living in the middle of, like, we live in the middle of the woods with it's just me, Keith, and our dogs. And so it's just like 24/7. It's like, oh, wouldn't this be cool? Or is that, you know, it's just a constant like creative atmosphere. It's really great. So amazing for concepts, but not super great for timelines. And I have to do a lot of shifting of the editorial calendar. If like we get too excited about something, I have to be like, okay, so now instead of this coming out now, we're gonna have to move things around, and this is gonna come out instead.
Nice. Very cool. And I mean, the thing that was very noticeable almost immediately is how prolific, you know, how much content that you guys are producing. And I guess it kind of makes sense to me. So maybe I think I heard that you have almost like a backlog of content that's already been produced, and now you're just sort of shaping it in a way that it's time to release it. Because in my mind, I was thinking, how are they doing this? Like, there's not enough hours in the day for a 2-person team to be rolling out this much content on a regular basis. But it sounds like two things. One is it is a big part of your lives, but the second is you do have a bit of a library that you're pulling from.
We're super lucky that we have that, because at least in my mind, the biggest part of it is the conceptualizing and the making things feel solid and real, which that's all story. Mechanics can be built around that. And we take very much a lore first approach to design. So if we have a mechanic that we introduce, it is because it supports the story that we're trying to tell with that option, whether it's a player option or a creature or a location, anything. And some people are super into that. Some people are not so into that. That's fine. People find what they want for their own gaming tables. But, oh, I just forgot your question completely. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's because of what we produce. Sorry. Also, we have that breadth of the lore and everything, which is super great to work from. We also have like no lives pretty much outside of doing this. I mean, I talk to people online. We're here in the woods. I have a full-time day job. And then after that, evenings are Underground Oracle, and Keith works full-time Underground Oracle. So there's a lot of hours involved still, because we are, pressing to try to get this out there to people, and to make this, one day, of course, like most people, we like this to be our sole focus, so we could devote all of our time to this. But the backlog, the years of work that we've already put into it definitely go a very, very long way, because then it's just doing, mechanics, play testing, things like that, ironing out little wrinkles, trying to make sure that we are appealing to whatever is currently, in vogue, I suppose would be the thing. Like sometimes it's like, oh, we know that Dungeons and Dragons is releasing Feybook in the next coming months or whatever. So let's, see what we have to offer that's going to fill people who are looking at these things, or what most creators do. But that backlog, that world that we have behind us is definitely helpful.
Yeah. Do you know what? It's really interesting the kind of I just appreciate the way that you guys are going about this, and the level of work you're kind of putting into it. I want to ask, you mentioned playtesting, obviously, for those versed in, supplement creation and things like that, playtesting is a common term. Can you explain for those who listen to this who maybe aren't so versed in playtesting, what that means to you guys? How do you guys playtest your stuff, and what does that look like for you guys?
For us, we have a personal game group that we've had at home, which we run options through. And then a couple members of that group have their own gaming tables that we allow them to play test and stuff as well. We have a couple of friends in the community that we also allow to play test, but we don't open up for wide play test or anything yet, just because we honestly don't have the size to like support that as of now. But the play testing is just to make sure that things feel balanced, so that people aren't running up against consistent problems. That we don't come from a background of like, when Keith and I at our gaming table, when we play, it's to tell a story. That's what we use D&D for. And I know there's a lot of back and forth in the community as to, what can and can't D&D do, or, different things like that, or is playtest even necessary? And so, but we design everything to be able to tell a story with it. So we're not super into breaking characters the way that some people in the community are, or, combining options and these, like I've seen people do things and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's ludicrous, and I never would have thought to do that in a million years. And now you can do 1 million damage, which is super awesome, but it's not my style of gaming. So we have to make sure that we get that out there so that people can look at those things and go, oh, I can do a bajillion damage with this, in turn 2 or whatever. So maybe you ought to clean this up a little bit. And so that's basically what we use playtesting for, more than anything else, is just to make sure that people can put this at their gaming table and feel confident that it's not going to disrupt their game for the most part. So
amazing for both, I assume, for GMs and players alike.
Yes.
Across the board. And it's important that you do that. Do you have specific like things that you require? Like, I know some people do playtesting at certain levels and things like that. Do you guys do it like level based and things like that for for subclasses and things? Or is it something that it's more freeform? You just want to see if it works within a running game.
It's definitely been more freeform for us, again, because it's just Keith and I. So we have plans to do Kickstarters, things like that in the future. Where we're going to be open up for wider playtesting for certain options and things. Something like a class obviously needs much more playtesting than like an archetype does, or then a group of spells or feats does. So it really depends on what the material is. But as for us personally, it's much more freeform, much more organic. And we also take feedback from people on our Discord. When something comes out from us, if we need to add errata or if we need to make an update or something, once a quarter, we try to look over everything. We look over comments from people, and then we'll add those updates. A good example of that is like one of our very early archetypes, the Field Medic, went through after people in the Shard community had playtested it for a while. I went through and I changed a couple of the features, and it got like a little makeover. So we've been doing that as well, to just take that feedback so that people, super important, I feel like, especially small creators, to be very grateful to the community that you're a part of and that's supporting you, and to give them that opportunity to give you that feedback if they have it, rather than just kind of brush it off. Like, you can typically tell when someone's just being a dick or when someone has like a legitimate issue. So if it's legitimate, we definitely take it in and we go, okay, is this something that we do need to change? And then if it is, then we change it. If not, then we'll explain why we're not changing it or why we don't feel like it's necessary for us to change it.
Yeah. And just to confirm, Jess, all of the supplements that you're creating right now are complementary to the settlement that you're the setting that you're creating. Is that correct? Or are there some things that you're creating, like you said, that are more timely for other things going on that might be just a standalone thing? Hey, let's get that out there. So just give us an idea of sort of proportionally how much of the content that you're creating right now is to support the setting.
I would say that 90% of what we've created so far, definitely we go, okay, this is where this belongs in our personal setting. We know that, when our setting comes out, how we'll reference things like that. We have definitely released supplements that we thought were a fun idea that we may not have in our setting personally, but we know that other people would appreciate it or other people would really be into it. The examples that spring to mind immediately are our Awakened Familiar supplement we made, and we made it as kind of like a fun thing. We did not expect it to be as popular as it was at all. And if you would have asked us, 2 years ago, hey, do you guys want to have Awakened supplements in your setting? I would have said absolutely not. But now I've seen so many people do so many cool things with it, and people have been so like into it, that we'll definitely find a place in our world, even if it is a small one, for instances of awakened familiars that have done things out in the world or whatever. So we're tying that in, but it wasn't initially created for that purpose whatsoever. Or even like the Field Medic, actually. The Field Medic was our first popular archetype, and we really didn't have a place for that in our world, because we do have magical healing in our world and things. But it was one of our early releases that got a little bit of heat on it, and we have met some great friends through it. And now definitely the Field Medic will have a place in our world somewhere, but it was not initially created for that purpose. So I would say 90% of what we make is strictly, like, we know it's already a part of Quasloth and it's coming out to give you guys kind of a preview of it. But that other 10%, it's just because we think it's a rad idea, or someone else has mentioned it and we're like, oh, that would be amazing to create. So
do you know what, it's pretty obvious that you guys are like drawing on all this stuff, and you're using these things, and things that make that kind of obvious. And I was saying to Tom while we're reading your stuff, I was like, I was like, there's got to be a world here. I was like, I'm reading all this, I'm like, I'm missing a beat somewhere. I was like, there's got to be, because the thing that really was getting me, that I was loving, was your quotes. The quotes are something that really, really get me, and I think that really adds something. I love that you have these comments from characters that are like commenting on things that you guys are happening in the supplement, whether it be, a quote from the lady who owns the bathhouse, or, there's, this part about this, this NPC that you guys create. It's really beautiful, and it adds something to it that I think, interestingly, I thought, talking about like Wizards, they when they released Tasha's and they wrote it in the style of it being like her, like addressing the players a bit more, it felt a little bit more organic than, some of their other content books, which have felt a lot more like kind of like, here's information for you, as opposed to like, this is a nice smooth delivery of like what is coming out. So I think the fact that you guys are adding all this detail and stuff is incredible and massively appreciate. Something that you've done a lot throughout this conversation is mention story. You've talked about how for you, story is important, how for your world, for, you know, when you're creating things, when it comes to even your approach of writing, lore is story. You're working with story. And I wanted to ask you, you've talked about Quasloth. Can you paint us a like word picture? Can you give us a bit of a story? Give us a bit of an insight into what Quasloth is maybe going to entail, going to look like? Any sort of teaser that you can. Obviously, we don't want you to, you know, to give us all the spoilers because we would love to play it or not. But please, like, give us an insight into what this amazing world that we have seen these supplements coming out of kind of looks like and means to you.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for all those kind words. That was amazing. And Keith and I are going to feast on that for quite a while. Great to hear that. I think my favorite part about Quasloth is that it's a world right at its renaissance. So there's not this like there's not and Keith and I talked about this a lot, and that's what we're like, we want to make sure that this gets across to people, is that it is not a setting that has like, it's not in the shadow of a great war. It's not you know, in the ruins of a collapsed empire. It's not, you know, it's at its peak, and there's so much possibility ahead of it. And so you play these characters in this world where, you know, all these amazing discoveries are happening and these new magics are appearing. And, you know, yes, there are evil kingdoms and there are evil people working behind the scenes, but there are just as many good people doing good things and discovering all these miraculous, you know, things that you can bring into your campaign. And it's that spirit, I think, that we've been trying to capture, and that just resonates through the entire continent of Quasloth. Even in the darker areas, it's still there. There's still that little glimmer of hope, that possibility, because our goal was, when we were really shaping this world, was we want people to be able to play any sort of tone of campaign, you know, that they want to run in this world. There's a place in Quasloth if you want to run, you know, a Victorian feeling horror theme, you know, campaign. There's places for that. There's places if you want to run like a city of guilds where, you know, you're scrapping around to try to get your people on top, and it's very political, and there's a lot of, you know, espionage and things like that. There's locations for all of this. For every style of campaign that you can think of, you could run in Quasloth. There's an area for it. But throughout it all, even in the darkest areas, even in the like the evilest place that you can go, there's still that little golden string that I think runs through everything, where you're like, yes, things are getting dark, things are getting terrible, but, you know, we're the heroes and we're going to make this happen somehow. And, you know, we may die because, you know, life is not guaranteed, but our death won't be in vain. And so we want that to be in everything. And that's what excites us personally as role players and as storytellers. And so we're trying to get that across to people.
I just love it. I so love.
You can feel the passion.
Yeah, but also, I just love that because, you know, what you described as, you know, sort of stereotypical settings that, you know, that serve a real purpose and that have a real engine behind them. You've gone and you allow for that, you know, almost like a smaller engine to be able to fulfill those objectives within a larger setting that's a lot more open to possibility. I just love, you know, I don't know if it's pertinent, but what just came to mind to me, especially in today's, you know, kind of climate, right? To have a setting of hope and positive and the possibilities that are, you know, so grand and so open to people. That's really cool. I think the other thing that came to mind for me is how big is, like, can you give us a picture of, you know,
how many settlements, how many cities, like what are we talking, like across the map? Are you guys, is it like, is it massive? Like what is the expansive size of this continent?
Quasloth is a continent with many countries and many areas to explore. We've been refining it over the past few years to be like, okay, are there areas that we're like, because we don't want to deliver anything where people are like, oh, I don't want to go to that place. It's boring, it's useless, it's a blank page on a map. So we've been trying to, but honestly, we're so deeply in love with like literally every inch of Quasloth at this point that it's probably all going to go out there. And I'm looking at a map of it right now, and it's pretty big. We'll say it's the size of the United States.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah. And there are wild places to explore, or there's places that it's like, oh, you shouldn't go there because, you know, here there be monsters or whatever. But it's, for the most part, it's various cultures and peoples and cities, and, you know, they all bring their own unique, you know, flavor to it. It's just like the world that we live in currently. You know, it's everyone's adding something, and that's the way that we design Quasar.
Yeah, it's a great analogy with the States, because, you know, when you said there's places that are a little less I was thinking like the Florida Everglades. There's that place that's like not civilized, and there's probably entities in there that don't even know who the one of the leaders is, or that type of thing.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you have kind of like the Midwest that's a little bit, you know, in its own flavor, and big cities, and within those big cities, different types of their own cultural, you know, pattern or fingerprints as well. So it sounds super cool.
It is. It's huge, and honestly, if we didn't control ourselves, it would be just ludicrous. I think it would be. We have cities that could definitely warrant their own giant campaign books themselves. So, but we'll rein it in and keep it tight for people.
Hey, I mean, like that's the beauty with when you have something that's so like open, innovative. And that's the thing with the setting, is you can give someone a setting and they can create their own, you know, story. And then for you guys, you know, you can then drip feed plot for different locations, you know, and have like actual like one shots or full, you know, adventures for, you know, however many levels you guys want to throw it out there. But do you know what's interesting? So we are very much at the inception. We're maybe like were you when you met Keith in that gaming store? That's where we are. And do you know what? I'll tell you what's interesting is, like, we've been running games and creating stuff in the D&D world for about 6 months or so, and the amount I've just learned from this conversation is fucking stupid. Excuse my French. Like I can't.
And I curse like constantly, so it's actually a relief to hear you cuss, because I do it so much that I've kind of been reining myself in a little bit. So
feel free.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is an open space. I often like try and manage myself, especially with American guests. Some definitely don't. It doesn't fly with some American people. Where our British guests typically will come on and be like, "Oh, you knob," and like we'll talk shit and stuff. It's a little bit different. So but no, like, I just appreciate what you're saying. And like, as someone who is new within the industry and working on writing and trying to develop my style and stuff, I appreciate, you know, what you guys are doing. And, you know, the way that you look at things is really refreshing and beautiful. And like Tom said, you know, you're not hitting some of the classic fantasy tropes, you know, and that's something that I think a lot of people, when they get into this, fall into in the inceptual years of their like career. They fall into those things because it's like, oh, what's safe, what's comfortable, you know, kind of thing. And then when you start breaching out into your like outer creative reaches, is I think when you really get some clarity. And no, like, honestly, I can't wait to meet Keith. I think you guys have really captured something incredible here. And, you know, something I wanted to ask you about, obviously, is, you know, the writing is a huge part of this. And I know you've mentioned this before, that art means a lot to you, and that the art in your world and in your supplements, and, you know, I assume for when you release your setting, will be massive. What's your process with choosing like your artists, and how do you choose when you're making a supplement that type of art? What, like, is it purely off of the concept in your guys' mind, or do you look at like styles and go, I think that fits with this supplement, so on and so forth?
So Keith is the art director. And when we were doing our year of reconnaissance in the community and stuff, that's also when we were looking for artists and things who we could work with, who we could afford, who we could collaborate with, because the approach that Keith takes for the directing art is incredibly collaborative, because things have to feel like our world to us. So when he is, you know, when we're describing a character or something, we want to make sure that, you know, this feels like them, basically. So we were very, very fortunate to have some incredible artists that we work with consistently. And I recommend them to absolutely everybody that I come in contact with, because they're amazing to work with. And I think they're incredibly talented. And we receive a lot of compliments for our art. So I think that also shows. But yeah, the process that Keith goes through, that he goes through with them is a lot of back and forth. It's like sitting in the room, just to make sure that, you know, every little detail is there. And, you know, we always apologized up front at the beginning, because it's like, I know this is going to seem real fucking, yeah, you're going to get really annoyed with it super quick. But this is important to us because we have to make sure this looks like this. But they were all so great about it. And I think as long as you're respectful, artists appreciate that collaboration and that, you know, back and forth. And so Keith honestly really makes sure that there's a piece of, you know, his vision, my vision, in all this stuff that comes out, all the, you know, the things that we consider to be super important that help express it. Because we both, like, one of the it's funny you talked about the quotes, but we both got in like Magic the Gathering around the like when we were younger. And for me, it was definitely the art, and it was also like the flavor text they put at the bottom of the card, because even though I knew nothing about this world, the flavor text like gave you a little piece of it, a little snippet of it, and it put a little heart and soul into these, like, you know, pieces of cardboard. And Keith was the exact same way. It was the art. You know, when I first met him, he had like a binder of magic cards he was doing nothing with except flipping through like it was an art book. So the, you know, both of those things, we make sure they really express what we're trying to get across to people, because for some people, that's going to be what grabs them. You could have the best writing in the world, but if you don't have good art, some people are going to pass you up. And it's sad and unfortunate, but it is the truth. People have, you know, we're very visual creatures, and people have a lot going on. And if you can't capture their attention quick, then you're not getting that attention. So we try to make sure that we get that right there in their face and say, you know, this is Mama Verdosa, this is, you know, Kira Shell. These are the people that you're going to be meeting, and this is them to us. So Keith is instrumental in that, because I apparently don't have the eye, because I would have let a bunch of stuff go that he's like, oh gosh, you can't do that.
What's really apparent is, and I think it probably speaks to your output as well of content, is that you guys seem to have a lot of processes that have been refined probably through years of trial and error and finding out what is most efficient and most productive and all of that. And, you know, that isn't something that you can, you know, that you can pass. That wisdom seems to be something that is mostly acquired through experience, because everyone's process and everyone's content is different, and everyone's, you know, situation is different as far as team members and skill sets and all of that. And it just seems like you guys have really understood a process that maximizes your output, which is hugely impressive. Any thoughts on that?
I think we're both incredibly chaotic people, so it was super important for us to find like a groove that we could get into, so that we can make sure that we are putting out, you know, the supplements in a timely manner. And I've said this before, I operate best when I know that, you know, I'm under the gun. So what really helped us definitely settle into that routine too was the culpability of being like, we have patrons waiting for us to put a supplement out, and they're expecting the same quality that they got the last time this came out. They're expecting, you know, now it's not so difficult, but at the beginning, you know, it was like I was constantly sweating, because I was like, oh my gosh, I've got these people. And even when we had one patron, that one patron was waiting for me to get that supplement out, you know, and that was so important to me. And we give the supplements away out for free and stuff. And so I knew people would be reading those as well. But knowing you have that one person paying you makes all the difference. And it really helped us settle into where it's like, okay, here's what we're going to be doing. Here's, you know, the steps that we have to get it to go. And because we are both so chaotic, you know, it's always a struggle, and it has been a struggle from the beginning. I'm not going to pretend like by any means we're like a well-oiled machine. Sometimes there are definitely bumps, but, you know, we work very well together, and we get it through at the end of the day. So we do have processes, but I can't imagine from the outside they look nearly as smooth as the end result might pretend.
Well, it's a complete package, right? So you've got the artwork, you've got the beautiful writing, you got the layout, you know, it's been edited. It's clearly a well thought out process that, you know, I'm sure you're bringing resources in like artists and other things as well are you guys doing your own layouts?
We do literally everything but the art, because that's what we can't. And so it's just two of us, and we have a budget. So we take care of all the writing, we take care of all the layout, the everything. We take care of ourselves. So
are you doing the layout on InDesign, or are you doing it on like a home brewery or something like that? Where do you do your layout on?
We have custom assets that we've had made, and then I use GM Binder. And GM Binder is great if you're making 5th edition, and if you can learn enough like HTML and CSS to be able to add in your own stuff, you can make it look good and not like a stock, D&D thing. I've been really happy with GM Binder up to this point. I'm in the process of learning Affinity Publisher because they don't charge a monthly fee and seem to be better than Adobe. People in the community seem to be pretty happy with them. So I'm in the process of learning that, but GM Binder has been super great thus far.
Amazing. Okay. No, yeah. That's. I'm sure that will be helpful for us and others.
Yeah. Can I share with you one of your characters that I really, really loved?
Please do, because I am a creator and very narcissistic, so I love to hear about my own stuff.
I just like when I saw the Junker Snail, I was just like, that is fucking brilliant. I love him so much. And just the description as well. I thought it was just so creative.
Again, it was the fact, it was what you said earlier, that you found like the heart of this creature, this thing, and what you did with it was go, cool, how can this be used in the world? I think the thing that we really loved was what materials can one harvest from this thing. And I think you did it with a couple of other of these like snail guys in this supplement as well. But this one really stood out to us. We just really loved the concept of like scraping off some of this ooze, and it like makes a good adhesive and stuff. I think like you said, you make it tailored to the world, and it made it special. And it stood out so much to us when we saw it,
awesome.
and
Thank you guys
we
so much.
absolutely loved it.
And you probably like know it when you it's kind of like bottling just that little bit of lightning when you catch one, right? And they're kind of like children after a while, aren't they? They're just they kind of fit into the whole family. But and you're probably hitting different people with different elements of the supplements. But that one for me, just like immediately, I was like, wow, that is just the level of creativity, and then the follow through of the other elements was super interesting and impressive.
That's awesome. That makes me super happy. It's funny, snails, here's a little spoiler. Snails have been such a almost like a I don't want to say a long running gag, because they're typically very serious situations we run into them. But in our world, throughout our campaign, since I met Keith, you'd run into these various snails. And 90% of the time they were just like ridiculous murder machines. But every now and then they'd be a little junker snail or something that you could buddy up with. And the junker snail is my favorite in that supplement. I absolutely love that goony little dude. He's the absolute fucking greatest. So it makes me happy like him too. He's great. We've had some great times in our games with the junker snails and the people wrangling them around, and so that makes me happy.
Amazing. Do you know what, I was saying to Tom, and something that I really appreciate about what you guys do is your kind of creature creation. So I was telling Tom, in terms of my brain, how I create and how I think, and where a lot of my concepts come from. I was I'm a lot more you said, that political, in a city, espionage, kind of thing, and coming at it from typically a humanoid character perspective in a lot of cases. And for me, developing a creature is something that I struggle with, because I don't know why my mind works better for people and that kind of thing than it does for creatures. Not in terms of I could give a creature character, not a problem. The issue being is coming up with a snail that has junk attached to it is something that doesn't come easy to me. So I think something else that we've really appreciated about what you guys do is a level of creativity for me that is a little bit out of my realm at this point, and is something that I want to bring more into my kind of wheelhouse. And you guys inspire me with massively, because your creations are both out there and really like you said, grounded, centered, realistic, not obscene. In weird cases, even though a snail with junk on it is kind of obscene, they're not obscene. Do you know what I mean?
It's believable.
That's amazing. I appreciate it so much. But I'm gonna. Keith has been the forever GM in our house for so long, and he'll run it. He'll rarely do we run into a creature that has ever been in a monster manual ever in our games. It's typically it's a concept that Keith's gonna try out on us, and there's so much flavor and life. And even when you run into like just the typical flora and fauna, there's so much there in that idea. And we go back and forth with like, just building this thing out because for us, the goal is, okay, it's a snail with junk on it. Like that's okay. That's cute. It's a cute picture. But why do I want my players to either love this thing or hate this thing? Like that's an important part of it. When you run into something, you should have a response. It doesn't have to be, oh, I'm afraid it's going to kill me. It should, sometimes it's, oh my gosh, I want to take this thing with me everywhere. Or this is the grossest thing I've ever seen. Or, there needs to be a legitimate reaction that's based in like how a real person would react, because that is how we approach it. Like it's everything's fantastical, but there's that thread of realism that keeps you in the moment in the game where you go, if I had this thing and if something were to happen to it, I would have a legitimate emotional reaction. You know what I mean? So even the smallest little creatures that we make, we try to make sure that there's something there. What reaction are we trying to inspire with it in the players at the table, and how do we get that across to people? How do we make them value this?
And the balance that you guys you attain with that is really nice. It really is, because they are fantastical, but you can kind of see that little fella, kind of like in your world, and it's super, super cool. We talked about Keith a few times during this session, and it'd be great to just get your thoughts or just share with the larger community. He seems like a really, really dynamic, creative powerhouse, and certainly half of the creative engine behind the Underground Oracle. Just talk a little bit about his strengths and what he brings to the table and to the D&D world.
He's just wildfire. Like it's so like it's amazing to me, and it always has been. I think I used to read when I was younger and stuff, like different cultures and stuff would really appreciate like their storytellers. Like they were very big. And that isn't something that I think in American culture we've ever really, in my culture anyway, that we've ever really done. And so I didn't really have I couldn't really grasp it. I'm like, oh, they tell stories. That's great, but they tell stories. And I met Keith, and he to me is a true storyteller. Like he's one of those people that, if he was writing books in my mind anyway, and I don't, again, I guess take it with a grain of salt because I am incredibly biased, but he's someone like, a Neil Gaiman or someone like that, where it's just these amazing creative storytellers that have this way of connecting to people through whatever the situation may be, whatever it is. That is his skill and his talent. And, the fact that we're able to get these out there and start sharing more of that, makes me tremendously happy, because in day-to-day life, it's not a thing that is able to be conveyed to people at all. So to be sitting on this amazing talent and no one know it, to me was a waste. So the fact that we're doing this, and it gets to leak outside of the Saturday games that we have I love it. But to me, that's his major strength, is that, just being able to create things that I want to invest my time in, that I want to invest my life in. And he'll come up with a concept, and sometimes I'm like, there's no fucking way I can turn that into something that's mechanically viable for 5th edition. I'm like, we need to pull back. And as much as I love it, sometimes I am like, you need to fucking pull back. You're killing me. You're killing us. It happen. And then there's back and forth, and then we make it happen somehow, because we are able to. We're just complementary to one another. And so he had, a lot of his super fantastical stuff, is still waiting to be made, into something that we can put outside of our games, because the mechanics have to complement it. And we don't want to, if you're going to take away from it and strip out what's making it magical as a character in a story, or as this part of a story, then there's no point in putting it out. So we have this back and forth a lot, but so far we've been able to get those things out that, I'm like, oh, I'm going to the office, give me a few hours, I need to think about this. And then I go in there and I'm like, oh, there's no fucking way. And I'm just beating my head against it. I'm like, oh, well, I find this whole thing. And then before I know it, it's ready to go, and it's fantastic. But yeah, that's it. Again, I could talk about Keith ad nauseum for the rest of the fucking day. So,
so let me ask this. Obviously, you talk of Keith in this light, especially with his DMing and whatnot. Does he have any interest in showing the world, like running an actual play game, or doing anything like that, where we could get a flavor of what his amazing DM style is like, or anything like that? Has that ever gone through his mind?
It briefly, right now we're running a game to play test an adventure module that we're thinking about coming out with. And Keith's running that game for a group of some of our champion tier patrons, and a few of our friends from our Discord server. And it's fun and everything, but as far as like putting on an actual play or something, I think the major fear we have is that it's difficult to, when people know they're watched, it's so much different than when you're in a room by yourself. So it's hard to find players even that can give that, give themselves to the story enough to feel comfortable enough to get the back and forth and the get the magic really rolling. So it's been a thought, but I think the passion really more is in getting that into our supplements and getting those out to people so that they can play them in their games or in their actual plays. That's probably, I would say, the big goal. And just running games recreationally, but he may change his mind. He's a creature of whims, so we'll see.
Dude, how's it feel having Michael Jordan in your house? Of
Yeah, it is. He's like the Michael Jordan of storytelling. Yeah, I know he's gonna watch this and he's gonna be pissed at me. He's gonna be like, no one's gonna believe I'm that good, but
No, we actually Keith, we actually have stuff that we can gauge it on, and actually
there's tangible shit.
It's not an overreach at this point. It's really not. So
I wanted to ask as well, like you've talked about like your guys' home sessions. Now, we run our like home session and it's in person. We have people come to the house and play. I also play in a couple of sessions, and I play on the internet because my DM is in South America and I'm in the UK. And so, like for you guys, do you mind doing it on the internet? Did COVID affect the way you guys play? Do you play in person, or is it over the internet for you guys always? What's your kind of setup for you guys?
We do play in person now. There was a big gap where we weren't playing. But with our home game, most of the people that we play with in our home game, they're not big on VTTs. They're pen and paper people. Theater of the mind is how we always play anyway. And even when we're using a VTT, it's mostly theater of the mind. So our home game is in person, and it always has been. And there's a magic in gaming when you're like just a few feet away from someone that I think it's really hard to capture over the internet. But we have been playing, especially since we partnered with Shard. We've been playing and using them as a VTT, and they're amazing. I mean, as a VTT, they're the only ones that I use, and we do play currently our weekly playtest game with our patrons through Shard, and it's the best VTT experience I've had. I still prefer in-person gaming because I always will, again, because there's that energy that gets passed back and forth. It's hard to do online, but we definitely do both.
Yeah, it's also
that's what we were saying as well, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the exact conclusion we came to. We started off actually because obviously we started doing this like 8 months ago, and that was during this like COVID pandemic that is an absolute clustercuss. And so we started online and then finally when in the UK, when a lot of the restrictions lifted and people were able to test personally and things like that, we had our group come in, and instantly the vibe was different. Instantly everyone was like much more on board. Like it just changed everything almost instantly. And it's one of those things where the energy is palpable. It's right there, and like you said, a natural 20 in front of people for some reason, versus like on the internet is just a completely different experience. Like people go nuts when you succeed and you're in a room together as opposed to over the internet. You know what I mean?
Even like the little, to me, because I'm a forever player more than a GM, but it's those little moments that tie all the scenes together. It's those little moments between characters. It's the little minutia that, to me, those can most often be lightning in a bottle. It's those interactions that you have with the different characters in the world and stuff. And I think in person, you get those so much more organically, and you're able to really let those moments just hit you, you know? So something that maybe would be incidental if you weren't sitting across from the person suddenly becomes like a moment. And I think that's, to us, the D&D is just like, it's a story, it's moments that we're all experiencing together. And I think doing that in person right across from each other is the way to really grab those.
Yeah, I think it's almost like there's a mixed message going on right now with, you know, anyone that is thinking about going virtual in their gameplay or even streaming. I think there's a confusion of what we're seeing, which is brilliant entertainment, right? Playing using the vehicle of D&D. But those guys are, you know, for the most part, they're professionals in their own right in entertaining with their voices and you know, characters and all of that. And so it isn't as realistic when we think about, okay, well, you know, could we capture the same magic that we're seeing them capture? We don't really consider that in their minds, they're playing D&D, but they're also entertaining for an audience. And it's really a split thing. It's not, I don't think one takes a priority over the other. And if one does, it's the entertainment more than the gameplay, I would think.
And if you're judging like your DM or your players or your table off of like, oh, why can't they be more like Critical Role, or why aren't you like, you know, Brendan Lee Mulligan, you know, like, wow, oh, like, come on, man. It's not realistic in of that. One, they have budget that you can't even like, us people who are playing at home, like, dude, the budget that they have is unfathomable. Like it's a massive amount, and they're able to, one, have like editing, sound, lights, you know. Again, you see some of them with crazy miniature like rigs, like especially if you watch like the old Acquisition Incorporated live ones that they do at PAX. They've got like dioramas that are ridiculous, and they come in costume that are ridiculous. You're just like, it gets wild. And I think Tom's right in of that there's a big difference between a home game and what I would call a professional game. And by professional, I don't mean that they're better. I just mean that it's run professionally. It's like people walk into the studio and go, I am acting now. It's not, I'm sat around a table with my homies, drinking a beer, eating some Funyuns and having a laugh. Do you know what I mean? Like,
that's the thing.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
To me, it is super different. Even when you listen to like some of our friends do podcasts, like, you know, Mark or the guys that do like our podcast, and they're amazing. And you listen to and it's like, you can hear in it that, you know, they're professionals. They've been doing this for a while. There's, you know, I know that from afar guys like do some editing, things like that. And you can't expect your home games to be you shouldn't be expecting your home game to be entertaining to another group of people, because that's not what it's for. It's an experience for a small group of people to enjoy together, as it's fairly intimate. I mean, even when you are eating the Funyuns and drinking a beer, you know, in the next moment you might be crying because your junker snail got killed, you know. And you have to have that freedom to be able to do that. And if you think that there's like this invisible audience watching you, you can't do that unless you are a professional actor. I know I can't. I've been role playing now since I was like 17. And so I'm very comfortable with role playing my characters out with our table of people that I've been role playing with for years. But if you were to put me on one of these shows or in front of a camera or something, it would be like I was an entirely different person, because I'm not an actor. You know, I'm a player in my home game. That's really what I like to do. And I think the expectation shouldn't be, you know, I'm going to be this person, or this is exactly what my game is going to be like. That's not what it's meant to be. It's meant to be a vehicle for you to enjoy time with your friends, and you can't really expect it to be anything else.
Yeah, and I think there's the further complication is, very much so. And the further, I think, challenge here is that technology is trying to create that experience that you're seeing on YouTube for us in our home games, and that, you know, trying to like VR some sort of like setting or some sort of, you know, feel. And I'm not sure how that's going to work, because
we talked about this earlier.
You know, too much of that starts taking away the role of the DM. It starts making it a game, like a video game. And so I mean, we've been talking about this a little bit. Any form of conversation around that you guys have in your whether in your home game or just between you and Keith?
I mean, there's always like, there's the dream, you know, VR experience or whatever, where it's like, I look exactly like the character that I am in my head, you know, and I get to do all this cool stuff, but that the technology that most of us have access to will not be there for probably my lifetime. But also you do miss, I mean, there's just, again, it's a very, very human connection, I think, that makes the role playing special. And you need to be able to look each other in the eyes, in my opinion. You need to be able, whether that's on a computer screen or at your table, seeing the little, we pick up on stuff that we don't even know we're picking up on. And if you're really into your character, you're conveying things that you don't even realize that you're conveying to the people around the table. And that can't really be mimicked by, you know, technology that's making you look like an elf or doing things like that, at least not at this point. So I think, and it is a lot of it is people are like, companies are gonna try to, you know, capitalize on people trying to be the next Critical Role or whatever, even in their home game, or people's expectations of, you know, trying to have this like professional setup in their VTT game with, you know, their friends across the United States or across the world. But yeah, it's just not, you're not going to get that. It's not going to, you're going to miss out on, again, that lightning in a bottle, those little moments that you would have through just like the normal interactions that you have with people. So even though, you know, you don't look like an elf and a dwarf right now, if I want to, I can pretend you look like an elf and a dwarf. That's personally good enough for me. But, you know, I guess everybody's mileage may vary on that one.
Yeah. Do you know what's interesting is, like, I guess I kind of stand on this point, and I don't know if you would agree with this, but I would say the closer we get to, like, and so Dimension 20 recently released a trailer for their new campaign that they're doing, and they've got this new like 3D virtual tabletop that they're using. I know Corridor Digital, who is another YouTube entity, is doing a series called Son of a Dungeon, where they're getting actually dressed up in character, like you said, filming on a green screen after playing a game and recreating what happens in the game on a green screen and turning it into like a video, basically like a movie, a mini series for you to watch. And something that I keep coming to is, like, as we get closer to, you know, like maps existing and players being able to see things for their own eyes, the role of the dungeon master becomes more of just the mechanical part of the game as you go, and it's more just, I'm here to tell you when to roll a perception check, or, you know, when to, you know, roll initiative, or when to, you know, to have advantage or disadvantage, as opposed to, because I'm not sure if you've experienced this, but it's something that I've both done and experienced as a game master and then as a player, is there's times where when you're with a virtual tabletop, you'll have it there in front of you and you'll maybe have a map loaded in or something like that. And it might be something that when you're in the flow, you know, DMs will forget to put in the level of description that they would, because there's a map there. There's a visual representation. You know, you don't have to go, well, there's 4 walls. They're about, you know, 30 feet in width and like 40 feet in, you know, length, you know, and, you know, the floor is cobbled, and, you know, because there's a texture for cobbled floor, and you can see where the walls are, and you've got a ruler that tells you that it's 40 feet and 30 feet. Do you know what I mean? And so I feel like it lessens the point of the dungeon master, and you're losing some of that magic that the dungeon master creates. I imagine for you, that would be, you know, having that lack of story from Keith would be an issue. Do you fall into the same category, the same line of thought as me?
Definitely. And especially because, like, again, NPC interactions, things like that are so important. I mean, they're people in the world. They're everything is an element in the world that you're interacting with, and at least from our perspective, it's the GM that is the one responsible for getting that across. And it's so much more than rolling checks or, you know, it's you have to have that level of involvement where the game master doesn't feel tied to, you know, what you're being limited to with your eyes, basically. And that's where we're at with that. Like, we use Shard, it's an amazing VTT. And I would say what Keith primarily uses the map setting and stuff for is to show art to people. So when we walk into a room, there's a picture of a lively tavern room. But if we want to know what, is in the room and things like that, we're still asking him, can you describe the layout of the room? Let us know, what's here if for some reason we needed that. Otherwise, we know there's a party happening and we're in this tavern. That's what we know. And that's just the way that we prefer to play, because again, it continues that connection and that communication between the game master and the rest of the people at the table.
Fully agree with you. And that's a great way to do it in terms of, I love the idea of and so many people fall into that trope of like, cool, I need like a layout map of like what this looks like. I love the idea of like a photo of a busy tavern, and you're just like, cool, this is what's going on, let's describe that. That's awesome. I really like that. It seems like not only do you both have your heads screwed on very well, but you are bringing content to the community with the right intentions for the right reasons. And all I can sit here and say is thank you for, one, being an inspiration to creators like us. Two, thank you for providing us with content to use in our games. And shit, and am I excited to see what Quasaloft looks like, feels like, smells like, when you guys bring it out and give us the fully fleshed out version of that world. But all I can say is I am both stunned, a little bit gobsmacked, in awe.
Gobsmacked is English, so what's the translation?
Jaw dropping.
Yeah, that's
something along those lines. I honestly am just perplexed and blown away by the consistency, the commitment that you guys have to this. And again, from all the people who appreciate what you do, thank you from us and from all your patrons, all those people. We love you guys for what you do and what you bring to this community. So thank you so much for that. As we kind of round this off, is there anything else that you want to quickly touch on before we kind of end off, before I give you some time to talk about some stuff coming up for you guys? Is there anything else you want to touch on?
No, nothing from my end. I've been having fun chatting it up with you guys.
Amazing. Hey, it has been absolutely amazing. So I'll hand it over to you. Shout out, your socials, what's coming out next for Underground Oracle, and anything else that you want to shout out. New cat or dog you may have got, I don't know, whatever.
We're at UO Publishing on Twitter, and we have a link tree there where you can find our Patreon, our website, everything. Also, Keith and my Twitter handles are right there as well. We have, the first and third Friday of every month, we release new supplements, and then we also do monthly map packs. We have this Friday, it's something that I've been really excited about. It's been a nerdy obsession of mine for so fucking long, but we have something, a barbarian that comes out, and they use tattoos basically to empower themselves. So Path of the Skin Scribe will be coming out on Friday. And then at the end of the month, we'll have a supplement that introduces a new game option called Jinxes, basically, and a couple of little malicious creatures that give them to you. So they're kind of like tiny curses, or like the opposite of charms, I guess, if you really want to simplify it. So we'll have a shit ton of those and some little creatures to throw them your way. Next month, we have a new edition of the Cantrip Cantina coming out that is like Fae themed to fit with, the Witchlight stuff that's going to be hitting. And at the end of the month, we have a new extraordinary location. It's a really great city that we're excited to show off, called Bristol Glenn. And it's an entire city of smugglers that they've built the entire city around their smuggling operation. So there's like a map of the city, which is just lovely and lush. And then there's like the underground where they're like shuttling contraband back and forth. And Mama Bardosa has a presence in that city as well. So that ties into the bathhouse again. Down the line, we are hoping to launch our first Kickstarter as well very soon. So that, look out in the next few months for some more information on that.
Wow.
But lots of exciting things happening. We're trying to really build as much momentum as possible and just keep steaming ahead.
I think you guys got a lot of free time.
Yeah, they're hours. They're sat watching Netflix and playing Mario Kart all the time.
Hey, I got a question for you. Bristol Glen. We live in Bristol, England, and it is known for a sort of a smuggler. Its history is around smuggling, and it has the underground sort of pathways. And is that something that you guys have based the name on?
We took inspiration from that, yes, a few years
Amazing.
back, absolutely. And we were like, what if this was this amazing fantasy location where, you know, these people got together, the origins are slightly different because really it's more like wealthy individuals trying to get ahead of the king that's taxing the shit out of them. But what if we built this like a lavish city where everybody, you know, the quality of life is magnificent, but everybody just happens to be kind of in on this smuggling operation. So, but yeah, we did take inspiration from that. Absolutely.
So cool.
That's awesome. Do you know what? I'm sat here, dude. I am so excited for barbarians and tattoos. That is, as you can see,
that's the other thing too. I'll throw this quick plug out there. Our Patreon is pretty cheap. For people that don't know, I know we release a lot of stuff, but it's $3 per month. Gets you like our last quarter of supplements plus all the stuff that's coming out. And then at $6 per month, you get our entire a year of our back catalog in PDF form. Plus you get everything that we have ever created available on Shard Virtual Tabletop. So if you're a Shard player, you unlock our entire catalog on Shard. Otherwise you get an entire year of PDFs in the backlog. Amazing. And then also, you know, lots of cool exclusive things that we release, like tokens and things for people to use. So
that's so
huge
dope.
bargain. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Hell to the yes. Well, do you know what, Jess, it's been such an honor to speak to you and to be able to pick your mind, get into some of your process. We will 100% love to have you back on, but this has been Homie and the Dude, the father and son podcast. For us, hit us with the Holy Trinity, guys. Like and follow on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter as well. It's where we're most active. It's where you can find out what we're up to next. But this has been an awesome show. Thank you so much, Jess.
Thanks,
you,
guys.
Jess.
Seriously.
Amazing. We're chugging through. We're loving doing this stuff for you guys. If you want to support us, if you want to make sure that we can keep getting, you know, better quality set, better quality lights, make the filming better.
Bigger batteries for the camera.
Bigger batteries for the camera.
Yes.
You know, all that kind of stuff. You can do that by just liking, following the page, and subscribing to the YouTube channel. That is what really makes a difference to us.